Hi there, I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And today we're going to be talking about how upbringing really affects relationships.
This is super important.
Yeah, it's really interesting that nobody helps us understand how we form our ability to love and have our relationships. And nobody teaches us growing up that people love differently, right? But it's really true. And many of you guys that come to the channel are shocked to hear how people attach and bond and connect differently. But the more you understand how your upbringing, your childhood impacted who you are and the way that you love and the way your partners love, the easier it is to navigate romantic relationships. Which seems crazy, but it's true.
Yeah, and it can also seem kind of twisted to think, how can my relationship with my parents or my caregivers affect my love life? It seems like those two circles are really far detached, like they shouldn't combine.
Yep.
But in reality, if you think about it, your relationship with your parents is your blueprint for how you attach. When you're really, really little and your brain is still developing, you're learning about the world and you're learning about how you connect with people.
Yeah.
So that's really what it's all about. It boils down to attachment.
It really does. And I remember, even when I was a clinician, I had a hard time believing this stuff. And I would sit there with Margaret and just say, Margaret, this doesn't make any sense to me. How could something that happened when you're 2 affect you when you're 20? It just didn't make sense. But the longer, I've done this and the more we talked about it and researched it and figured things out, the more it became clear that, the way your parents bond and connect with you truly does impact how you attach and connect with other people.
Not to mention, when you're a child, you believe everything that your parents say. They teach you how to pick up a spoon.
Yeah.
They potty train you. You learn everything from them, including about relationships and how they're supposed to work. And your parents' relationship itself is a model for you very early on as to what relationships look like, what a mother and father type of bond is supposed to be, or so in your mind.
Sure. Like if you have a mom that has a lot of anxiety, that's going to impact how she parents you. If you have a mom that is more distant and cold, then she's going, that's going to have an impact on what love feels like for you. So we'll talk about the 4 attachment styles. You have anxious, which is where you're predominantly worried about abandonment, and it impacts you that whenever you feel a space or a distance from somebody, it makes you feel like stressed out, worried, scared. Oftentimes you feel like you're going to die, like a kid in the grocery store when they lose their parents.
And this is developed through inconsistent nurture. So this could be when you were really little, maybe your parents had super busy jobs and they couldn't be there for you 24/7. This could be, let's say, there was an illness in the family and your parents couldn't be present. So there are many reasons as to why these different types of attaching to people or attachment styles exist.
Yeah, sure. You could have a bunch of siblings and they just don't have the time and the energy to meet all your needs. Then you have avoidant attachment style. Now, in my opinion, the avoidant has kind of gotten to that place where they really don't trust people to meet their needs. They had so little love and affection growing up that they have a hard time believing people really care about them, that they can count on them, and so they often become very independent.
They get to that place where, because other people aren't meeting their needs, they give up. They decide, I'm going to meet my own needs. They might also get to a place where they're suppressing their needs. I'm too much of a burden on my parents. And you see this a lot with first-generation folks.
Oh, yeah.
People whose parents come from a different country. They are already in the struggle of adapting to a new place, figuring out their life. And so a child can see their parents struggle and stifle their own needs.
Yeah. Ultimately, I feel like the avoidant person tends to feel like they've just given up on other people. and that they just can't count on them. You know, a lot of times the avoidant will say to the anxious person, I don't trust you. And the anxious person's like, how?
Me?
How could you not trust me? I'm so good to you. How could you? I would never do anything to hurt you. But it's not about you. And it feels very personal. But it's really not about you. It's about how they trust other people, everybody. And so if you date somebody and on that first date, you go on a first date and somebody's like, I don't trust people, you probably got an avoidant there.
Or if they say, I don't have feelings, I don't have emotions.
Yep. The next one we want to talk about is disorganized attachment style. Now, disorganized attachment style is a real struggle for people, and it's often seen in people that have borderline personality disorder. They often feel like they're dying inside. They really struggle to soothe themselves, soothe their anxiety, and they can really get angry and hostile towards you because you're not giving them what they need, and they can lash out, but then at the same time, they feel that anxiety over losing you, and then they pull you close, and
Right.
it's a really interesting struggling pattern.
There's normally this push-pull dynamic, and with the disorganized attachment style, it's usually linked to some sort of trauma in early childhood.
Yeah.
And that's because the child gets the message that from the people who are supposed to love you, they also hurt you.
Yeah.
So they normally experience the extreme of anxious and the extreme of avoidant. Of, oh my God, please don't leave me. I'm afraid that you're gonna be gone forever. And, you know, why are you trying to take my independence? Stay away from me. You're trying to hurt me. Get away.
Yeah.
So you'll see this blend of the two, and it can be really confusing. I see this a lot with on and off relationships
Yeah.
that happen.
One of the things Margaret used to say is, I hate you, don't leave me. She'd call it hostile dependent, which is a term that's not used very often anymore, but it's a good mark of somebody that's struggling with disorganized. I hate you, don't leave me.
And there's also levels to all of this. So
Sure.
there's very extreme anxious, there's also subtle anxious. There's with disorganized, there's very extreme disorganized that need high levels of treatment. Then there's others who don't need as much treatment. So just remember that when we're talking about all of this.
And it can depend upon the person you're dating. Because one person you date could be triggering a lot of different things in you that another partner wouldn't. And of course, you can learn about all of this in the Creative Healing course, especially because that sucker goes into this a lot.
It does.
The cartoons are hilarious. We had so much fun making those. I miss doing those. We did a lot of the characters where you'd see a lot of the traits, but it really gets you to see, oh my gosh, that's me. I'm that.
Yeah.
I'm that guy.
Exactly. And then lastly, we have the secure attachment style. So this is the person who did receive enough, you know, there's this term, the good enough
yeah.
parent, enough nurture in their early childhood. They are able to depend on others without feeling like they're losing their autonomy. And they're also able to explore the world without feeling like somebody's going to leave them. So they have this nice, healthy balance.
They're very confident. And that's ultimately what we are always trying to teach you guys, is how to heal your attachment issues and become more confident. This is why we say this all the time, because if your ex doesn't come back, you still want to have that confidence, work through those attachment issues to be more confident with all the people that you date in the future. And not only that, but to understand your ex, if they come back, you'll understand them a lot easier. And the other people that you might date if you don't wind up with your ex. They're so much easier to understand when you understand attachment styles.
Yeah.
It really, to me, feels like Neo at the end of The Matrix when he sees things crystal clear for the first time.
Yeah.
You know, and it sees the numbers and the blips and the bleeps or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it does make sense out of everything. And I will say with the secure attachment style, there's no one person on the planet who is the most secure. There is no such thing as being perfectly secure for a partner. So I say that to remind you that nobody is perfect. We are all working towards an ideal and to have grace on ourselves throughout the journey.
Yeah, and understand that there will be moments where you still struggle with certain things, but the more that you're able to consistently show up in your partner's life and be a good partner and empathetic and understanding, the more likely you're going to have a healthy relationship.
And in research, it also shows that children who have been traumatized, children who have been abused, do have physiological differences in their brain versus kids who received enough nurture.
Yeah. You can see like pictures of brain scans where the brain looks so much more developed.
Right. And so this is stuff that has been very well studied. It's well known. And so if you think about our brains physically are different, of course it's going to affect our relationships.
Another thing that you want to think about is the familiarity of our love from our family, from our caregivers, and what that feels like to you. Because that has a big impact on how we connect to others. You know, a lot of times you'll see a really caring guy try to be there for a girl that's been through a lot of trauma, and she's pushing him away. She can't do the relationship. And he's just, I don't understand why this woman won't give me a chance. I've been nothing but nice to her. Well, she hasn't worked through her issues enough to have positive self-esteem and realize that the love she got in her childhood wasn't healthy. And so they're drawn more to somebody that's unhealthy, that feels toxic, that does toxic things. And if you don't talk about it, you're going to act it out. And Freud called that the repetition compulsion. So you have to talk about things. You have to get into therapy and talk about these things. Otherwise, you're going to continue to do it for the rest of your life.
And it can be really confusing. Why would a person repeat the terrible things that have happened to them early on? Why would they want to be in dynamics similar to the dysfunctional ones that they grew up in? And back on that repetition compulsion, the reason that people do that is in effort to understand and in effort to fix it.
Yeah.
They think if I can recreate this in my adult life, then I can finally see how my parents were able to act the way that they did. Then I can finally be able to reverse things. The problem is that they're never able to, and they just end up in these cycles.
Yeah.
Where nothing changes.
For one example that I see often is like maybe there was a mom that was cheating on the dad and hooking up with a lot of guys, and then the daughter winds up being like the mom, doing similar things, it's really trying to understand, why was mom like this? Why was she neglecting me, going out and doing these things? It's trying to kind of put yourself in their shoes to understand why it happened to you.
Right. And I want to remind you, these are not conscious processes. People don't consciously think, if I do this, then I'm going to be able to fix it. It's all stuff that's going on in the background.
Yeah. So the more you understand and think about things and you're aware of things, the more likely you're going to fix it and have a healthy relationship.
Right. And reality is, there's only one relationship in your life in which unconditional love is expected. And that's the one between parent and child. And so many people will enter romantic relationships with this same notion. My partner should love me unconditionally, or I have to love my partner unconditionally. And so what this does is that you either stay in toxic relationships thinking, I need to love this person no matter how badly they treat me, or the opposite. You know, you will end up treating people not well and think this person should love me regardless of how I treat them.
Yeah.
So I bring that up for you to be aware of how you're treating your partner, making sure that there's that baseline of respect between each other, and remembering that your partner is not your child. You know, you don't have to tolerate everything. And likewise, your partner's not your mommy or your daddy, and don't treat them like that.
I see a lot of guys take advantage of women and want to be taken care of. I hear a lot of women say, I'm paying for his bills, I'm taking care of him, I'm doing this for him, I'm doing that for him, hoping the guy is going to step up and become a man and learn to take care of himself and be a good partner. And they just get more and more frustrated that he doesn't.
Right. And this includes emotional maturity. A lot of times the emotional burden in a relationship is placed on the woman, and that's, I think, partially because of how we're socialized. I think being emotional is maybe more acceptable for women than it is for men, to a degree. Not too emotional, though, or else you're called crazy.
Hysterical.
Exactly. But what that means is that the man in the relationship, considering it's a heterosexual one, ends up depending on the woman for all the emotional needs and all of the necessary emotional things that have to happen for the relationship to work. So if you're watching this, everyone is responsible for their own emotional maturity. Go to therapy, reflect on your life, talk about your feelings.
Think about your childhood. Think about your relationship with your caregivers. Think about your ex and their relationship with their caregivers, and understand that how their parents look to you now is very different than how they look to them as a child. A lot of times I see people say, no, I think their parents are great. Well, were they great 30 years ago when they really needed them? In many cases, no. It was a lot different than what you realize. You know, a parent of an adult is very different than a parent of an infant. In other words, when you see some of like your partner's parents maybe in their 60s or 70s, now they have a fairly easy relationship with an adult. There's not as many demands placed on them to be a nurturer or a caretaker, as opposed to a parent of an infant or a young child, that they have a lot more needs and demands. So that's why a parent of an adult can look like they're great and wonderful. I only see him once every 3 months, and we have a great dinner together. I was over there, and we'd go over there 4 times a year, and it was great. Well, it looked a lot different when they were a baby or an infant.
Yeah, and these are all important things to reflect on, especially if you're going through a breakup. And we also hope that this information can help you make sense of what's going on. A lot of times breakups happen for very odd reasons, and we're left confused, we're left really hurt, and we're hoping that this can make sense of some of what's going on for you.
And that's what we're here for. You can always book a coaching with us on my website, askcraig.net. I do email coaching and I do Skype. And Coach Victoria does Skype coaching calls.
I'm here if you need me.
So it's very easy to sign up with us. Just click on our names on the top of the website to do that. But that's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And we will talk with you soon.